Hi, everyone. I like to bring into this space participation and having a more collaborative space up here. So there may be times when I ask for individual input or crowd participation, and would love for that to happen as we go. One thing that I wanted to do now is, like, as an opportunity to start the space, was I know that y'all talk to one another, and we heard some from the chat, but I would love to hear if there are two people from inside the space want to share some of the ways that they receive care. If there is anyone who wants to share how they received care, just and I'll repeat them back through the mic. If nobody wants to, I'm happy to share my own. Does anyone want to share? Yeah.
I have a friend who sent me back and forth every day, just to kind of digest.
Someone, yeah, you're saying that you and your friend send memes every day, back and forth. I'm gonna repeat it back in the mic for those on Zoom and all of that. So that's great. I love that. Thank you. Does anyone else want to share? Yeah.
My sister cleans and cooks for me she teaches me how to do laundry, and she shops for my clothes.
Your sister cleans and cooks for you, and helps with laundry and cooks your food.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Folks, I'm coming into this space and with a couple. I have many values, but two of the values that are on my heart for this particular sermon are the value of centering marginalized voices, which matches with the Black Lives of UU Principle 5 of most directly affected people are experts at their own lives. And I also bring a value that I learned from a Dungeons and Dragons podcast, a great dungeon master named Connie Chang, who gave the amazing insight. Half of this I had heard before, the other half I hadn't. Of the only way out is through. I had heard that half before, and the other half is, and the only way through is with. Folks, I want to talk about COVID-19. I want to talk about the safe events during the height of the quarantining period of COVID-19. Of course, the coronavirus is still active. It's still out there because of many things being outdoors. Things are safer. The numbers are very low right now. And also, I want to talk about during the height of that quarantining period. I want to talk about the types of events that felt safe, the types of events that felt like the people organizing those events were trying to show care for the participants that came. I think about those areas where there was someone at the door with a little temperature detector checking people's temperature at the front of the door. I think about the folks that made sure at the front door to look and make sure that people had a vaccination card, and actually turned the people who did not have their vaccination cards away from the door. I think about the people who started a text chat and said, hey, please put your negative COVID tests, rapid tests in the chat so we all can see. I think about those as the events that felt safe. And then I think about the unsafe events. Now, there's the obvious ones, the ones that said, we don't care whether you're masked or not. Those were obvious. Those were obviously not safe. But I also think about some of the events that were less immediately obvious. The ones that would have posters that just said, test before you get here, or all attendees should be vaccinated. But there wasn't anybody checking. There wasn't anybody at the door actually double checking to make sure that folks had a negative test and that everyone's vaccination cards were up to date. In that case, caring looked like turning people away. In that case, caring looked like refusing to organize large in-person events, which I want to mention and commend First Unitarian, how much our organizers were focusing on the science and making sure that there were virtual options. I think this congregation did a great job. People Thanks. Yeah, cool. And are continuing to do a good job. There's still science to pay attention to. The people wanted to prove whether they cared. They used vaccination and masking as a status symbol. They would not do the hard work of teaching people how to mask properly, and would not do the hard work of kicking people out when they weren't following the guidelines to do things safely. Like, did everyone know that, like, at least for those surgical masks, like, as much as possible you should avoid touching the front of it, since that's part of how things can spread? There were skills to learn about wearing our masks that we had to learn, and teaching people who might not have known to keep one another safe was an important part of, and is still an important part of all of that. Are there any, so that distinction that I'm making of the sort of the appearance of caring versus what it looked like to actually care, are there any questions about that? Does that make sense to everyone, that distinction? Any questions online? Oh, cool, I never heard that. About the touching the front of the mask, I'm assuming. Cool. All right, I'll keep going. Friends, I'm about to also talk about Unitarian Universalism. And when I get there, I'm going to be making this distinction between whether we care versus how we care. And as a way to do that, I'm gonna try something out. We'll see how much I remember to do it. But if I can make this side of the audience, if y'all could be whether we care, so that when I gesture to this side of the audience, y'all can say whether we care. And this side of the audience can be how we care. When I gesture to this side of the audience, y'all can be how we care. Can we practice? Yeah. All right.
Whether we care, how we care.
Love that. Love that. I'm going to give some context. This is for the Unitarian Universalist UU world, the UU world. Can anyone predict what I'm about to talk about with the UU world? In the spring of 2019, there was a UU World article that I will not name because I think the article is still actively harmful, that a friend of mine summarized as an article written by a cis person that centers cis people and cis perspectives about trans people. I'm going to call back center the marginalized voices. Most directly affected people are experts at our own lives. That wasn't an ideal thing for the UU World to do. The UU World issued an apology. And in the summer of 2019, there was a special feature with 6 articles written by trans people. I want to highlight 3 mistakes that happened during that time. I recognize 2019 sounds like a long time ago, but I still want to highlight 3 moments along that timeline. The first mistake was that the editors of the UU World it's not that they hadn't thought about that issue of centering marginalized voices. They had consulted with Alex Capitan, a trans UU organizer, who told them before it went to print that it was a bad idea. Now, publishing an article about trans people, that certainly sounds. But publishing an article by a trans person, that would be. Mistake number 2 was that in the article that was published, it could be that the article did a decent job of talking about trans people. It could be, but one of the things that I identified at the time was that there was a trans subject who was identifiable by the article. Some names were concealed, but the author's name was not concealed, nor the specific ways that author was related to the people involved. That meant that the trans person could identify themselves, could figure out who was being talked about. That's not anonymity, that's not safety for that trans person. This raised privacy concerns where if one of the subjects involved had read the article, they could have figured it out. And at least one of the subjects did not give consent to be talked about that way, in that identifiable way. obscuring the names looks a lot like trying to prove. Whereas the author really should have obscured the relations, which should be an example of about privacy. Mistake number 3, they did not address an apology directly to the trans readers. The editor of the UU World at the time issued an apology. The apology is detailed and indicates changes that were being made to rectify the previous mistakes. However, at no point is there a specific apology directed towards the trans readers of the UU World, or indeed of the apology itself. Having a decently structured apology certainly seems to be trying to show, but the way I would want people to show would be to look me and my friends in the face for all the world to see and ask us for forgiveness. A further mistake now that we are in 2023 is that since the apology, the summer 2019 edition of the UU World had 6 feature articles by trans leaders clearly in response to the backlash that occurred for the spring 2019 edition. Since then, there have been 10 print editions of the UU World and roughly 25 feature articles, and as far as I can tell, none of those feature articles in any of those editions were written by trans people. There was, however, a feature interview with the cis mother of trans kids. There did not appear to be any quotes or input from any trans people involved in this interview. I have a perspective in this that means I don't understand certain marginalized perspectives about those series of mistakes. I have benefited from a bunch of white privilege, so I won't understand the intricacies around race that got messed up in that moment. There are folks with accessibility needs that, as an able-bodied person, I will not understand. The things that I do understand in this moment, as we're taking time together and as we're talking about it, I am a trans person, and so I can speak to those issues. I also know that I am a good orator. I anticipate that many of you will be moved, and I look forward to hearing your kind words. But before you come up to me, I want you to think about whether you are simply trying to let me know whether you care. Because the way how you can show me care is to tell me what you are going to do about my sermon. What is it that you feel charged to do that only you can do in this moment? How are you going to educate yourself? How are you going to participate in what you learned? And I will return back to that question. What are you going to do about this sermon? In my opinion, Unitarian Universalists like to prove without worrying about. I have experienced this many times in multiple contexts. I've experienced it many times at the congregational level, at multiple congregations. And I hate to say it, young adults, I have experienced it in regional young adult gatherings. I've experienced it at multiple Unitarian Universalist summer retreats. I've experienced it at our General Assembly, our yearly General Assembly. I've experienced it internationally at the European Unitarian gatherings. Humble brag. And I'll acknowledge there have been times when I've experienced it in this congregation as well. So, what do we do? I told you I'd return to it. I want to get one if anyone is brave and wants to offer an answer in the space, and I'll see if there's anything in the chat as well. Does anyone want to offer an idea of what we can do about it? It's okay if you don't have one. I have an idea that I'm happy to offer. Yeah. Trans people certainly serves me, like personally, and also in my mind, like the centering marginalized voices. Yeah. Oh yes, thank you. Listening to trans people was the advice that was offered. Thank you. And my response was like, all marginalized voices, not just mine. Like, hopefully y'all are listening to me. I do hope in this moment. And anything in the chat, anything in the, do better. Okay. Vague words. Great. My idea, my personal idea, is that I think that we need a methodology of spiritual care. We have the scientific method: question, research, hypothesis, experiment, analyze, report. That by going through that cycle of method, we come up with scientific knowledge. I wonder what kind of cycles of intention we could have that could be a spiritual methodology. Not bylaws, not principles, not policy, not gut instinct, not a single person who leads our morals at the front of the pulpit, but a methodology that we can all participate in. Now, I don't know what that methodology should look like. I don't have an idea. My contribution in this moment is just to acknowledge that there is something that feels like an issue and a vague idea of what it could look like. I think that maybe that methodology should include articulating and sharing our individual values with one another, learning about our own positionality and teaching others how to see theirs, community accountability, and rejoicing together in beloved community. I'm going to go through that list one more time. Articulating and sharing our individual values with one another, like, for example, when I shared with you that two values that I was bringing to this sermon was centering marginalized voices, and the only way out is through, and the only way through is with. Learning about our own positionality and teaching others how to see theirs, like trying to acknowledge that I come with a lot of white privilege, ability, and also with all my queerness and transness here at the pulpit. Community accountability, like offering moments for y'all to let me know what you think, and rejoicing together in beloved community. Beloveds, will you sing with me, "We Would Be One," hymn number 318. Stand up as you are able, and let's sing and rejoice together.
I'm Reverend Hannah Capaldi.
And I'm Reverend Abby Tennis. We are the ministers at the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, where our mission is to awaken love and justice in our lives and in the world.
We're so grateful that you watched, and we hope that the sermon connected with your soul.
We also want to invite you to join us for a live worship service every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can always find the link to that service on our website at www.philauu.org. In these services, you'll hear words like you've just heard, and you also get a chance to greet one another, pray together, sing together, and we even hold a virtual coffee hour after services to get a chance to greet some new and old friends.
If you want to support the mission of this community and you feel moved to give, you can do so by going to the website that Reverend Abby just mentioned. You can find that link below, or you can text 215-709-5095 and follow the prompts to give.
If someone in your life needs to hear these words today, we encourage you to share this video. And again, thank you so much for watching.
We hope to see you soon.